Hello.
Okay, I
Yeah.
Amrit, I am really sorry. I know that I really go the extra mile to get you all, and then we should get it right on our end. But this is a studio problem.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it has just been solved, and we are on air right now. So it's a recorded version. We'll edit this small talk out. So let me
All right.
start. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to Pan Vibes. Today, Dr. Tang Yuk and myself have the honor of hosting uh, Mr. Amrit Samaroo. Amrit, good afternoon. I have to begin by saying congratulations on the youth band's performance last weekend. Again, your credit to yourself and a credit to East Trinidad. I have to give East Trinidad the credit.
Yes, yes.
The,
Thanks a lot. I mean, it's really the youths put in a lot of hard work, and it was a combined effort in terms of management and our new arranger in the junior band category, Mr. Neil Simon. Mhm.
but we have to give where credit is due. I know that Supernovas is your thing.
Mhm.
It's your creation with the help of people around you and with all people like yourself standing in the corner. Things fall down. So you're there, and that's important. You're the glue that keeps everybody together. And
Well, I just there to make sure I don't fall down. That's all.
but thanks again for being with us, Dr. Tang Yuk. Um, I know that you would have Amrit in a corner, and I hope he could take the leading rights and the straight jabs and the uppercuts and the overcuts and so on, right? So, welcome, Amrit. Let's hear what Dr. Sangyak, those pressing questions that he may have for you.
Sure.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a great honor to chat with you. Um,
Same here, Doc.
so, one of the questions I want to ask you, we often hear of young people in the steel band fraternity who are interested in arranging for steel band. And if you were advising a young musician who wanted to go into arranging, what would you say they need to be doing, or what should they be doing to prepare for that career path?
Ah, well, I mean, first off, you had to have a firm understanding or a firm a firm understanding of the instrument itself. Excuse a minute. I just have a lingering cough there, trying to get rid of. Right. But yeah, you would really have to look at what it is you're doing, study it. Not only study it, understand the role each instrument plays, and not just in a, I would say not just in a traditional sense of what you hear or know, but what you could do with it. Because for far too long, I think we just falling into formulas and falling into um, what has been done before. We need some more experimentation, I think, in terms of orchestration and what you could bring to the table, you know. But with all of that, you need to have a firm understanding of the instrument and also listen to what has come in the past, how you could approach things, and and really get a grasp on music itself, you know, because arranging is one thing, but understanding music is quite more you know, in depth, I would say.
Right. So thank you for that explanation. And we asked several guests that question, and actually, everybody talks about what you just mentioned about knowing the instrument, knowing the capabilities of the instrument. So that's obviously something one needs to be very clear about. But there are conflicting views amongst band leaders, band arrangers, panists about how much knowledge of music theory and harmony does one really need to have to say, I'm going to now undertake arranging for a band. So just recently, we interviewed somebody who said, well, you don't really need to know a lot about music. You can just do it. What is your opinion about that? And I want you to be very honest, because we're trying to also educate our listening audience about the skills that are required to arrange for band. So let's say I'm going to phrase it a different way. Somebody hasn't studied music theory and harmony. Are they able to arrange for a band?
I would say yes, that is quite possible. Not studying music theory, um, but your oral skills have to be up there, and that in itself is a part of music education, if you will, or understanding music and appreciation for music. But yeah, it just makes things a little more difficult, I would say, in terms of explaining things and getting your message across in terms of what you need to be done in a situation. Now, yes, I know quite a few arrangers who are on that path of learning music in a more formal setting, but didn't start off like that, you know. So it is a journey for a lot of people, and I don't think it should stop you once you have that in you, or that creative urge to do something, you know, because most of the time it sits in you, and it knows when it really wants to come out. Sometimes, you know, doing things unconventionally, it happens like that as well. It's not really to the book, but it's there. So I wouldn't put it past anybody. But if you want to progress in the field, and have greater opportunities, you need to have that sort of backing in the sense of understanding theory and music on a whole, you know.
Right. So I'm glad you mentioned about listening or oral skills, because obviously a great part of the whole idiom of playing pan and arranging for pan depends heavily on oral skills.
Yes.
Mm, And of course, a big part of it is improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
When you take new members into your band, do you do any sort of test for like oral skills? What are they hearing? Or do you just take anybody and you train them from whatever level they are?
We are open to all. We are a community band. Anybody who has the interest and has the time and shows the dedication, most importantly, to the craft. I mean, you can't say you're going to be a member of Supernovas and show up once a week to rehearsal. We rehearse, you know, almost on a nightly basis leading up to an event. It's quite a demanding uh, schedule when you look at Supernovas, because we perform at a high level, and you know, always in demand, so we always have the next gig. So to keep up, you would really need to have your chops on. That's one, or have a good ability to read, in the sense of being literate, where you could just pass your score, you work on it. If you can't make it to the panyard, and when you show up, you have it. So yes, that is possible, but in terms of a background check sort of thing, we really don't do it. Is if you can hang, if you can hang, you know. In the sense of when you line up with the rest of players, you would know for yourself if you had the level or not.
So it's well, I like the sound of that. So everybody is welcome,
Yeah,
and it depends on whether you're going to cut it in terms of the commitment, showing up at
correct,
rehearsal, and
correct.
being able to
Execute.
execute
Yeah,
what is required. So let's
yeah.
talk about commitment for a minute, because
Mhm.
what is your? I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that. From what I have noticed in I'm not a panist, as you know, but I mean, in the classical world, it's a similar sort of thing that a lot of people are very eager, they're interested, they want to do it, they want to be part of the performance, but when it comes down to the actual brass tacks, you need to be at rehearsal.
Yeah.
Many people, they can't figure out a way to manage that. So how does Supernovas deal with that? If somebody expresses interest, they really want to play, they're enthusiastic, they might be very talented, they've shown talent when they come to the Panyard, but they can't make it to rehearsal. How do you deal with that? So if we could just talk about the importance of commitment in achieving your goals.
Yeah, I mean, well, don't get me wrong, we have talented players, and they very well could make the gig with two rehearsals if necessary. But there's so much that goes on in the rehearsal in terms of explaining parts, explaining what I would like to get in terms of shaping music, and getting the flow right, that you tend to miss if you miss a night or two, um, and that could be detrimental to the band when you show up for the performance. So in saying so, we really need to have, you know, everyone committed to the same task as one band, and we need to show that type of unity in the rehearsals. That chemistry comes across in the performance as well. When you see Supernovas play, you know, it looks like, you know, the tenors are an extension of the background in some instances, because they flow together, even with the dance steps and all of that, and the performance of the piece. You know, it sounds like a unit, it sounds like an orchestra, which is what I go for with my arrangements. You know, it's orchestral in nature, no matter, you know, what type of genre we play. I try to keep a particular sound. So when you hear the orchestra, you hear a big band. You know, you're just not hearing a steel band or part of a steel band. So the commitment to it is very important. I mean, we had instances that players couldn't make certain rehearsals that we call, and we're close to our engagement or our event, and I had to drop them. I had to cut them. There was I want to air my dirty laundry here, but there had been instances with the band that I cut a whole section, because I wasn't happy with their rehearsal. And I know that I'll be doing certain things in the rehearsal that if they miss, they're going to mess it up in the performance. So I have to cut a whole section. It happens before. And what I had to do was, you know, basically substitute other instruments to get the parts that I needed from that particular voice, and we made it happen on the gig.
Right.
You know.
So because certain people couldn't honor the commitment that they thought they would make, they
Yeah.
give you extra work at the last minute to
Yes.
rearrange the piece. Did they understand that that put you in a position where you had to put in did they understand that?
They did, because, you know, unfortunately they thought, well, if the whole section don't come to the practice, the whole section will still be needed for the
Yeah.
performance, and we'll be
Yeah.
there for the performance. And I had to tell
Yeah.
them no.
No,
You know.
so because this is a very interesting, I find this a very interesting topic, and it's not only you know applicable to supernovas. Apparently, it happens with quite a few bands, and especially with today's trend of some very skilled players playing with multiple bands for the panorama, moving
Yeah.
one night here, one night there, so they can't always be at rehearsal. So, but let's go back a second, because you made some very important points there about it's not just knowing your part, it's about how you fit into the fabric, what you want to do with the ensemble and the texture and so on. If they're not at rehearsal, they may not be able to execute it accurately. So here's the question. Do you think when you say that to a player, right, that I need you here, I know you know your part. I know you know your notes and you could play it by yourself, but that is not everything. Do you
Yeah.
think that player really understands what you're talking about, or they think you're just being difficult?
Half of the time they think I'm being difficult, but when I explain it, because of the amount of polyphony I have sometimes in a piece,
Yeah,
if a particular line is missing, probably the cello player misses a cue, because he's hearing at that frequency, or he's looking out for a cue from that particular section.
yeah,
So that's why it's important to have, a representation of each player in each section, at least, one or two that could bring the various lines. So I put it to them like that, and show them, hey, this is like a puzzle, a puzzle here. If you miss a certain part, this part is going to fall, and we need each other to hold it up. So I try my best to explain it, based on my experience, and showing them in terms of how the music is orchestrated, and what I want to accomplish.
yeah.
You know,
Do
the,
do
the,
you
the,
think
the, whole,
do
the
you
whole
think
aim of the
that's
thing.
yeah? Do you think that, well, a colleague of mine once said, we were talking about this particular notion of trying to explain to a musician why it is so important, why the commitment is so important for you to be there. And it's not only about knowing your notes or your part,
Yeah.
it's about the collective and the whole.
Correct.
A colleague of mine said to me a couple of years ago, Richard, they won't understand it unless they see the difference actually. They have to experience the difference
Mhm.
to then understand what you meant. Do you agree with that, or no?
I mean, people learn. The old people have a saying: if you can't hear, you go feel, right? So, in itself, it means learning by experience. So, yes, a lot of the times they see it in other sections. Hey, we missed this. We missed this section tonight, or half of the section show up, and the
Yeah,
rest of the band there, and the whole configuration is off because you're less in one department. So the band, I say, oh, let's song tonight, all you think, oh, let's song tonight, and half of the time, they won't answer, or they miss something. You know it when you hear it, and especially when you're in it,
right,
performing it, you're
right.
gonna feel it, and
Yes.
when the band is striking at 100,
Oh yeah.
so
Oh
they
yeah.
definitely feel that.
Yeah. It's an incredible feeling when everything gels
Yeah.
and it according to how it was planned. Now I have to tell you, as you're talking about this, somebody missed something and it affects another section because they didn't hear, because you
Yeah.
missed that cue. You
Mhm.
know, years ago, I was at the Pan Festival. This was I don't know what the correct title of it was. This is when they used to have Pan festivals where bands played classical pieces,
Mhm.
transcriptions. What was that called? Remind me.
You have the music festival at Queen's Hall, and then there's the Steel Band Music Festival as well. Pan is Beautiful, I think, was a incarnation of such later
Okay,
on. Yeah.
right. So not music festival, because I'm pretty familiar with music
Right.
festival.
So it could be the Steel Band
Okay,
Music
Steel
Festival.
Band Festival. So
Yeah.
there was this band, and I'm not going to call the name of the band. They were
Mhm.
very, very well-known band,
Mm.
large band that performs at Panorama every year, still
Mhm.
performing.
Mhm.
Um, they tend to rank in the top 5
Mhm.
consistently. So we're talking about a major band, and
Well,
they
they have to be
performed
from
at
Port
this
of
Pan
Spain then.
festival. I'm not going to say, but but
I was
it's
joking.
related to what we're talking about, because
Yes.
at this performance, and the conductor, music director, was a very well-known personality in Pan, and they came on to
Mhm.
play, and
Mhm.
a section got lost.
Mm.
They got, because they're playing from memory. The
Right.
section got lost, and because that section got lost, it affected the other players, and they got confused, and the whole thing just dissolved in front of the audience, and the band stopped playing.
Well.
Now, I'm sure you've never had that experience in a performance, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if do players understand, like when you're talking about commitment and you need to be there,
Mhm.
do they understand that this is a possibility if you miss a cue,
Mhm.
right? And this is a critical cue. Let's say the cellos have a cue, and then the tenor pans are going to come in off of that. Well, the tenor pans probably will know what
Yeah.
they're doing, but maybe another inner voice or the
Mhm.
low bass or whatever, they didn't hear what, or if the cello pans come in too early and they're taking the cue off of where the cello pans came in, but they come in too early, so now the next part comes in too early.
Yeah.
Do the players understand how critical that is?
Yeah, I believe so. Of course, in classical music, the margin for error is much slimmer than, let me say, something with a pulsating rhythm behind you. Usually, a rhythm section would save the day. But it has happened on performances that pieces we're known for a band. We're known as a band that usually plays the current hit of the day, or bringing something new to the table every time we show up. I don't like to go to the like a back to back gig and have the same repertoire as I did the night before. So because of that, our repertoire is always fresh.
Mhm,
And that means sometimes putting down a song the night before we go into the event. And yeah, sometimes it happens that you know um, players would miss it because it's not really a song that they would have inside out. Of course, they learned it the night before, and you played a whole set list before that, and then
mhm,
this piece came out, and you're studying, hey, which part are supposed to come in with this boy. It has happened in the past, so they
mhm,
understand the need for at least the players that work with me
mhm,
in my setting. They understand the need for that particular type of commitment.
mhm,
um as I say, we try our best to perform at a high standard. um
mhm,
that's how I knew it, and that's really where I want to push the art form in terms of my contribution to it. Keep it at a high level.
mhm.
You never know who's sitting in the audience, who's listening to you. You always want to be on top of your game, and give the people a good show. So to do that, you really need to be there. You need to be present, because with our stateside, it is a commitment. Yeah.
Right,
Hmm.
right. Now, something that I've always wondered, so if you could tell me about, the importance of the section leader.
Hmm.
So, well, I would assume the section leader has to know the part better than anybody in the section, that they have to teach it and make sure everybody is on top of it.
Hmm.
How much do these members of a particular section rely on a section leader in a complicated arrangement? Let's say when there might have been not as much time to rehearse it, are they looking at the section leader as they would in, let's say, a conventional symphonic orchestra? The second violins are looking at the principal second violinist when they're going to come in because they counted 14 bars of rest. And they're not sure because they never played this piece before.
Yeah.
So they're looking at the principal second violin to make sure when he raises his bow, okay, yes, I counted correctly. We come in now. How much do they rely on the section leader? Or by the time you perform, is it everybody's on top of it completely?
No, 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 I mean, it's humans you're dealing with here. And I say, a lot of the time it's high pressure because you're executing in front of a huge crowd, or people very intimate, as it is with panyard settings. People right over your pan to see what you're playing. So yes, they do rely on the section leaders quite a lot, in a case like that. But in recent times, we have a situation of a lot more musically literate people coming into the band, into pan in general, which makes my life a whole lot easier. I mean, to be quite honest, I haven't been to the pan yard in a couple nights. but music going down, so I'm able to, write the score and send it up the road, via email and they WhatsApp or whatever, and they pull out their phones and put on the music and execute it before the night is done. So the need for the section leader there, I wouldn't say has diminished, but is to make sure, all right, as much as we all reading it, did we interpret the score properly? One, check with me. Hey, this thing, all right, this is what you need here. I was like, yeah, and they go ahead and pass on the message and yeah, so we see a more collaborative type of learning happening now, with people being a lot more musically literate, if you will.
Right.
Yeah,
Now,
Allow me to ask. Allow me to
sure.
ask.
Mhm.
Um, in an orchestra,
Mhm.
morale is an important part of the arranger's work, and
Mhm.
I would imagine the section leader's work and the persons around the band.
Mhm.
When you are dealing with 100 players, 100 plus players, that's 100 personalities.
Definitely.
Um,
Mhm.
it's hard work doing what you do in terms of being musical director and coming up with the material and arranging and so on. It would affect, I would imagine, would affect you
Mhm.
when you have to can be concerned with the moral of the band also, in terms of every day it's another day, and orchestras practice
Mhm.
for hours on end every night. Um, my concern is this, and allow me to use this analogy. When I talk with Renegades people from yesteryear, they would say that when Jit get vexed, you would know. And
Mhm.
he would stand in front, and you can tell from his body language and the way he would position his head and look at the band, people would get quiet and know it's trouble
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
Uh, so he had his style and he got his results and so on.
Mhm.
How much of a challenge is it to you as musical director and arranger and to your section leaders and so on? Especially when we're dealing with a band like Supernovas, where it's a young band in terms of it's young players you have. When you look at it, there are old people in that band. A few. So your work is even harder because you have to keep the players motivated. You can't. They may not be mature enough to deal with, or maybe they are, but it's a work in progress. And music is an organic unfolding each night. It's not something that it just happens. You'll have to work on things and tweak things and get it right
Mhm.
because it's reflected in the final performance.
Mhm.
How much effort does that take on your part? Or what is that experience like? Dealing
Um,
with the organic unfolding of it and dealing with the players and the morale and keeping the band, ensuring that you have a peak performance.
well, as you say, is 120. Well, in our case, like 130 different personalities you have in the yard. Everybody's coming with their own um, you know baggage, if you will. But when we get into the panyard, we're there for a common goal, and is really, getting that into the head. Look, whatever troubles you may have, let me leave it by the doorstep when we get in, and work on what we're here to do. That's the first thing. Secondly, you have to have empathy. It's people you're dealing with. You never know what someone is going through at a particular point in time. When you see odd things happening, or you see players looking a little off, approach them, talk to them. That's where the managing skills come in, and you know um, really the the how to put it, the human side of things kick in. You must know when one of your players, if you're familiar with them, a little off, and you pull them aside, talk to them, find out what's up, and hopefully, you could lend some advice, or a few supporting words that could get them back in the game, as soon as possible. But not only that, make them feel welcome in the band. It's a difficult line to toe, but I can't focus on it too, all the time. If I see it, I would address it. But most of the time, as the creative there, in the sense of the person responsible for putting on the music, I would be focused on that. So again, your section leaders important to pick up on these things, and know when somebody's having an off night. If they could deal with it on their own, they usually do. We have great section leaders in Supernovas that really good with working with other members, and working through things, and getting results and solutions to problems. But if not, they bring it to us in management, and we see where we could go. But at the end of it, as I say, we're goal oriented, but we're a family as well. So we try to extend as much support as we could to members that need it.
Tell us something about your song of choice. We know in the previous years you would have gone back in time as such, and pulled something from a previous year. Your song of choice this year is indeed is it Kokoti?
Yes, it is.
What about that material attracted you?
Well, just to correct it, there's only once we went back in time. We only played Wet Medong last year. But everything else has been current, either a composition by myself, or artist of a composition of that particular year. But Kokoti was kind of picked for the band, I would say, considering our geographic location, where we are. Our community started because of the cocoa plantations and agriculture, as it were, with Lupino. So this year is sort of like a ode to Lupino, or a tribute to our community, and we want to bring that across as much as we could in the arrangement, in the decor, and in the whole scheme of thing is the team. It's loving Lupino, if you want to put it like that, right? But definitely, we have a whole estate of cocoa. Why not Kokoti?
Are you pleased with the band's progress in terms of the preparation for the execution of the music? Has that been going to plan?
Thus far, yes, because we had to we really had to plan what we're doing this year. We had some commitments with Iron Park, and some other events that were happening around the band. So I had to make sure that the band was in a particular place in terms of music, minutes, I would say, before we took a break, because it would mean something like 5 days of I wouldn't say downtime, because we had members coming out and rehearsing and getting parts, and so forth, but we had 5 days of music not going down. So I had to make sure that the arrangement was in a certain place before we start back again, which was this week. So yes, I'm pleased so far with what we're doing, and yeah, I would say the longer season gave us a bit of a breather, in terms of getting it right, and planning properly. Yeah, so we weren't straight out of the blocks as some other bands were. We started in like 2 weeks, into the new year. So far so good. Yeah.
Tell us something about your instrumentation. Balance, in terms of balancing the band, is something that we hear about. That language is in the public space, but balancing your band would be tied into the instruments that you have, the instruments that you chose on. How does one, in terms of public education, how does one um, balance a band in the context of the song of choice? Then is there a relationship between how you balance the band in relation to the song of choice, the music that you choose?
No, I wouldn't say the song of choice. So you balance the band in terms of the arrangement. So different arrangers do different things with the pans. For instance, like the seconds is used vastly different across the sphere. Some people use the seconds as a lower voice that would help the upper range with more power or more girth. But myself, I tend to do it um, with a combination. We've done it as a part of the rhythm section where we use the second section as strumming to mimic the guitar in soca music, right? The rhythm guitar. So in that case, you would have to look at, you don't want that strum to overpower your 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 your, your melody lines. So you would have to pick enough people that you hear the strum, but at the same time you hear the melody. So that's really the art in balancing the band. And balancing the band doesn't mean you need to go with a finite set of players. It could mean just setting them up in the right places. So the judges hear them, who's the important people there. Yeah. So there's different things in balancing, but it all comes down to the arranger and the arrangement of the piece. What needs to be heard when it's need to be heard,
Do you feel pressure when you hear another band also performing the piece you have chosen? Because in your mind, as an arranger, as a creator of music, you would know what you would like, the music you would want the band to execute. Um, the question is very simple. Do you corrupt your thoughts by listening to other people's performances when you're putting together your arrangement, or you go with your natural instinct, what you're feeling, and you stay true to that, to your feelings?
Well, I like how you put it, corrupt your thoughts. But no, I know what I could do. I know what I bring to the table. Everyone has their own voice. Um, the style is something that is kind of getting blurred of recent times, where as in the past you had different styles coming up in the panorama competition, and all being rewarded for individuality and uniqueness. For instance, you had Ray Holman singing like Ray, in terms of rich harmonies and chord extensions and you have somebody like Bradley who would hold it with a groove, and then Jit with clinical lines cutting through each other and being punctuated by the rhythm, and somebody like Sharp who you could get lost in the whole you know in the whole texture of what he does and how he does it. It was really the golden age of Japan back then. I would say now you tend to find a lot of the bands singing similar. Um, so I try not to, listen as much, but it is a competition. You have to listen to a win. You have to listen to, you know, um, where the trends at and where the music is going, because at the end of the day you want your band to progress, and you want your band to be in the top billing when the night is over and when the season is done. So it is a competition. I wouldn't say I would corrupt my whole thing, but yes, I try here from time to time, especially when we meet in the competition itself. I wouldn't do that before because I'm kind of focused on what I'm doing.
Your father was not the kind of arranger that would go on stage and you know he had, that wasn't his personality, in terms of when you look at him, you're sort of reserved man.
Yeah.
Um, it seems that you carry that sort of that in your DNA. We are seeing now a trend where arrangers, they incorporate themselves into the performance, and they begin to so they're on stage, and there's a personality connect between the arranger and the crowd.
Yeah.
It's a musical competition, panorama. What are your thoughts in terms of um, the band presenting itself and connecting with the audience? Edwin Pouchet, I believe, said that panorama is all, there's an aspect of theater to it.
Mhm.
Do you think that the music has deviated somewhat away from purely judging the band on its musical presentation, or are you of the view that there's some theater that has presented itself now and that is impacting on?
No, well, definitely, all salient points there, and it is what it is. The competition has gone in that direction that you have to bring something, other than the music to the table. Um, there's the element of theater, as you say, that I would say has always been there, but is more amplified now, with someone in front of the band kind of taking the center of attention, a little more, and using it to his or her advantage, where you want to direct the attention. Um, but then there's bands like, All Stars, for instance, who
Mhm.
doesn't have that, but commands the same type of attention. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say it's necessary to be in front of the band. I know for sure, myself, I'm just not comfortable doing that. I would probably do it in the yard and for a short period just to get a smile or a chuckle from the players when they look like they're down. But really and truly, the competition is about the performance of the band. So I tend to step back, let them shine. They work really hard to do what they had to do. Let them have the glory in front there. Yeah.
Dr. Tang Yuk.
That was a very interesting discussion. Thank you, Amrit.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the process in the panyard. And for our listening audience, I wondered if you could talk about rehearsal technique.
Mhm.
Because I think your father was one of the early pioneers of really disciplined practice.
Mhm.
Um, could you just talk generally about rehearsal technique? Explain to our listeners what is rehearsal technique and give an example of it and tell us why it's important.
Well, rehearsal technique, to me, it comes down to the the band's ability to effectively use the time, to gain the chops, if you will, and executing the piece of music to the best of their ability. Um, Now that is done by different people differently, in different bands. Um, but what we have done is really isolate the different sections into one, into we isolate them to get the best out of that particular section, so it would eliminate the issues of confusion or wrong notes or, um, different phrases, that may pop in and out from different sides of the orchestra. So we usually, have the section leaders, keep their sections together, um, run drills in terms of sectionals. They would definitely have to start in night like that, where you walk in and there's section rehearsal going on. Then we pull everybody together. We run down the song, in terms of, full band, and then you start to zone in on particular parts that you want to emphasize, um, and it may include, correcting technique in terms of playing, and it may include as well a lot of explaining in terms of the vision you have in your head to get it across to them what it is you would like this the song like. um so all of that is wrapped up in rehearsal technique. Again, different people approach it differently, but
You're with us. You're with us. There was a slight little connectivity, yeah, but you're with us.
Okay, all right. Yes, yeah. So as I say, that's how I I interpret it, and how we run our rehearsal.
Great. And earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned in passing that after a particular performance, you might ask the players, well, how do you think you did on that? Is it customary that you would have a post-mortem with your band? And what kinds of questions would you ask them? And
Yeah.
what kinds of responses would they give you? And then how do you deal with the feedback? So when they say to you, well, I think we did real good with that, how do you deal with that? Do you use that opportunity to analyze exactly what went down and to advise them what they could have done better? Or do you just say, okay, you know what, they're on a high, they're feeling good about it,
Mhm.
let's just not say anything, no criticism, we'll talk about that a month from now when we meet after the break?
Well, I mean, it would be wonderful to have a month's break with Supernovas, but that never happens. Those players, and they let me know. But I do ask about, you know, a particular performance or a particular event, how it was for them in terms of preparation. One, I would ask them how you think the band prepared for it. Number two, how it was on the night in terms of, probably the setup or where they played, or that sort of thing. And because we are a young band still, we do have the umpteen years of experience to rely on. So we build in the arsenal as we go forward, in terms of experience. So I have to ask these questions. If not, I mean, I wouldn't ask the whole entire band, because you'll get 120 different responses. So I usually, ask a few of the members that I rely on, and know have been around for some time. In terms of what do you think about the direction this year, as opposed to what we did last year, and what do you think we should do next year, just to get in the players' head in terms of, are they enjoying this? Why are you here still? That kind of way. And really to keep them comfortable, and show them. I mean, I do rely on their feedback to do what I do, because at the end of the day, it's not me alone. It's not about me. It's about Supernovas and giving the world the best product we could give. So I can't do that without the players. Definitely not. So I have to check in and use the feedback as best as I could moving forward.
Do you find that generally players tend to be hard on themselves after performance, or they say, oh, we could have done this better? Or do they come,
Sometimes,
yeah?
yeah, sometimes you definitely know the players, the face looking sour. Say, what happened? Say, but I missed that run in the middle, boy. Yeah. Oh, like, that part I practiced that right through. I didn't nail it, that kind of way. So they
Right,
always looking for the next opportunity to get it right,
right.
which is a good trait, I would say, in terms of my players, because I'm the same way, when I perform, and you always want to do better than the last time,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I'll tell you something that many years ago, it took me a long time to learn this, but I would always walk off a stage after performance and fretting about wasn't perfect, this wasn't perfect. And of
Yeah,
course, no performance is perfect, no matter
correct,
how
correct.
well you prepare it and how good your force is. And I remember a cellist in my orchestra said to me after a dress rehearsal, she said, Richard, remember, 70% of the audience only hears the top line. And I went home and I thought about it and I said, he's right.
Yeah,
Why am I fussing? Nobody's going to hear that tenor voice that was a little bit flat. Nobody's going to hear that the second alto wasn't exactly together with the second soprano in these two bars in the
yes.
middle of the fugue.
Yeah,
So, it's interesting with Panorama. Panorama is a competition, and the judges are hearing it live. Now, they would have heard it in preliminary semis, but still, I'm sure stuff goes by that they don't hear. Do you want
Yeah.
to make a comment about that? We can avoid the topic if you don't want to talk about it. But, but it's the broader issue of what the general public hears versus what you, the arranger, and the musicians who have lived with the piece for weeks
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that for a bit?
Well, yes, it has pushed me in a direction that I really didn't want to, or I wish I didn't have to take. But yes, there are times that I would have to dilute what I really want to get done to emphasize certain parts and to make sure it's heard, because it's what you're seeing on these score sheets. This wasn't clear enough, or that wasn't clear enough. I mean, it wasn't meant to be clear. It was meant to be a wash of sound coming at you. What you need to hear is the parts I would emphasize, but more and more they take that as muddiness, because probably in their some judges' heads they're looking at 3 lines or 4 lines. They can't hear more than that. So you would have to cater for that and understand, hey, these are humans as well. They hear this thing 3 times for the season, so you have to make sure what is your intention, make that be known, from the outset, and really maximize on those 3 playings. So I would say it has forced me, I wouldn't say forced me, but led me to rethink how I orchestrate and use certain instruments, um, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because I could still, I mean, as I tell other people, Panorama is a competition, but you could have a show at the end of the competition where you could do the greatest thing in your mind, whatever that may be, and have the public listen for that,
So,
listen out to
so,
that,
so
uh,
Amrit, so
yeah.
Amrit, so what you're actually saying then is the artist has to compromise.
Hmm.
They
It
have
is a
to.
competition, unfortunately. It
Okay,
is.
okay, but okay. So this is the broader question:
Yeah.
is the artist working for a prize, or are you working for the art?
Mm.
Well, what is your view? And this is a philosophical
Yeah,
question.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, yes, of course, the band want to win. Your sponsors want the band to win. Your
Yeah.
band manager want to win.
Hmm.
Okay, but the artist,
Yeah.
are you creating work for a prize?
Yeah.
Does the artist need this external validation of their self-worth, or should the artist be confident in what they do? Bugsy does whatever he wants. He
Hmm.
doesn't really care what
Yeah.
other people think. That's
Hmm.
one of the great things I admire about him,
Yeah.
right? We can dissect his arrangements and
Hmm.
talk about the unorthodox form and all of these things that go
Yeah.
on in his music, which kind of confuse people sometimes,
Yeah.
um, you know. But so this is a philosophical question about what is the role of the artist. Let's put competition aside. Yeah,
Hmm.
if the goal is to win the competition,
Hmm.
then you have to compromise for what you think the judges want to hear and the
Hmm.
audience wants to hear. But
Hmm.
the bigger question is what should the artist be focusing on?
Mm. Yeah. So we're going deep here. So
What
again,
are your thoughts about it? I'm sorry to put
yeah, no. But again, I don't think there could ever be a disconnect between the artist and his work. Right. First off, it is my work. It came from me. This is my interpretation of what I think a winning panorama arrangement should be. Let me put it like that. All right. I'm not saying that um if I do this, it will be, counterproductive to winning. But I see, holes, or I see things and this come with years of experience as well, eh? Because when you now start, yes, you want to showcase your full cadre of, skill, and you want to give them everything. Um, However, it comes a time, you sit back and you look what the crowd wants, what the judges want, what the band wants, and is you now the artist have to marry that. You have to marry that into a product, a production in these days now, um, that you could offer to the public. So I don't think it's any less artistic, um, that you're in the competition and going to win. That's where you're going for ultimately. As I say, you could have a concert after and showcase everything that you want to showcase, at that, right? But in saying so, we having an issue with how do we separate the the goat from the sheep, if you will, because now we're seeing a lot of ties happening in the panorama. You have a lot of ties happening in the panorama because things starting to, everybody kind of catching up into, all right, this is where you want, we'll give you that. So everybody giving you the same thing now. How are you going to differentiate that as a judge? I mean, I really feel it for the judges sometimes, because you have all these bands coming with the A game, and how are you really going to tell it apart? So it begs for a different question now. How do we judge um a competition like Panorama, where everything now is kind of sounding like something that, and the crowd is enjoying it all, by the way. So you really can't say is really crowd support, or cheering. You're hearing it, in different ways. So um again, I don't think you could really subtract the artist from the work itself. The integrity of the artist, I think, will always be there. That is their interpretation of a winning piece, if you will. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
I don't know. I don't know if I answered to your satisfaction, but
No, no, I mean, you're welcome to explain it as you see. So I think we're
yeah.
out of time, but it was such a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for making the time.
Yes, Doc. It was a pleasure being here. I know Mr. Ali has been on my case for a while now. To have a chat. So I'm happy that we could do this today. And yeah, I look forward to future endeavors.